Hi, I'm Adam in Wales and this is my board gaming vlog, and today it really is a vlog entry. It's not one of my videos where I talk about game mechanisms or my favourite games of the year or anything like that. This is actually a vlog where I'm talking about my life and I'm looking for advice about my life. So what we're specifically talking about is my wedding. And in fact, I have several weddings coming up. There's a German wedding. My fiancée Iris is German. There is a Welsh wedding, and there is also a little legal ceremony thing going on as well. So we're really sort of spreading it out over a month or so, making the most of it, milking it, I think is the word. And I kind of want board games to feature. Now I know in board game media, a lot of people will say, leave your comments below, let me know what you think, give me your take on this. And in this case, I actually mean it, right? I really do want your advice. I want your recommendations for board games to feature at our weddings. I'm well aware of various posts on forums on the internet where people discuss this sort of idea for their own weddings, and usually the advice that's given, and I agree with this advice, is leave it out. That's not what weddings are about. It's not about board games. It's not a board game convention. This is about something else. And that's absolutely true. But board games are sort of absolutely central to my life, really, and my being and my makeup. And also to my relationship, the relationship with Iris. That's what we do. We play games. And so we do want them to feature. I'm very proud of the games I've made. I want to be able to show the games off to people I haven't seen for a long time. And I want to also show those people what my life is like. And my life is largely made up. It's kind of framed by the sort of board game stuff that I and we do. So this is where I want your advice. I want simple games. I want games which are very, very small. I want to be able to put them one on each of the tables. So they've got to be very small. They've got to be very sort of easy. Okay, like you barely even need to read the rules. They've got to be attractive. They've got to be things that people are going to be drawn to, that they might gather around and go, oh, what are you playing? Oh, maybe we could try that. And then they can swap. I've got to select the game for the table. So we've got, I think, about 10 tables, something like that. And on each table, there's different groups of people. I've got, for example, a table of my sort of professional colleagues. I work as a dentist and as a lecturer. And so I've got some, people that I have to behave fairly professionally in front of, the sort of people who I wouldn't normally expect to see playing board games, some people who are a bit older. So I've got to select something to put on their table. I've got another table. I mean, I've also worked a lot in the past as an actor, and so we have a table that is full of actors and theatre people, and I imagine they're going to feel less self-conscious than the dentist table if they're sort of, there's a board game put in front of them. Then we've got tables of old friends, uni friends, school friends, people who I may have introduced some games to. I may have just started to sow those seeds of interest in the board game sort of hobby, but aren't fully into it yet. And then there's a couple of tables of gamers, people who play games all the time. I've got lots of friends who do that, and so they could handle something more complex, but do they want to at a wedding? Probably not. They do that at the weekends and several times throughout the week anyway, so maybe I don't need to. I'm not talking about sticking a Agricola down in front of people and saying, right, let's make a 2-hour session out of this. No, I'm talking about sticking Dobble in front of them. We'll cover the games that I'm thinking about in a moment, and then you can give me your suggestions. But I think this would be nice, right? I like the idea that in that long, boring section that goes on between when you have the ceremony and then you sit down to have your meal and listen to the speeches and stuff, that's a little section where the bride and groom, myself and Iris, are going off and having our photos taken and things. But what's everybody else doing? Well, they're going to be drinking and chatting. But some people might want to pick up a little card game and throw that around, or throw some dice around, or play a little party game. And certainly later on, as the disco comes on, people have had a few drinks, we're after the meal now, I know that a bunch of my friends will feel more comfortable sitting down and playing a board game than they will dancing and getting wrecked. That's just the nature of it. That's what my friends are like. So I think this is going to be quite nice. I've already thought about a selection of games. Most of them are really small and I can put them on the table. There's some that I want to be there, particularly some, I suppose some of my games as well, but they'll be set off to one side because they're a bit big to stick in the middle of a pretty wedding table. So we're going to go through the 10 tables, 10 ideas, and then you can adjust those ideas, tell me what you think, and we'll see if we can come up with a list. Now, I'm quite happy to buy more, okay? Quite happy, believe me, when you're spending on a wedding, buying a few board games is kind of the, you know, I mean, the amount of money that's being spent on arranging a wedding, a few board games isn't going to make a huge amount of difference. So if you suggest something really, really good, I'll probably get myself a copy and I'll probably play it. Yeah, so with that all in mind, let's have a look at a few of the ideas that I'm thinking of. Okay, so my game, Doodle Rush. Doodle Rush is going to be there for sure, okay? Doodle Rush, super quick drawing game, but it's a big box, takes up a bit of space. I'm not sure it's going to sit there in the middle of one of those tables. This will be off to one side on a separate table. And the great thing about Doodle Rush is I also have a German edition with German language, which is going to be great because a lot of the guests can't speak any English, they can only speak German. So Doodle Rush, German and English will be there off to one side, but the game that I wanted to mention right now is the game that actually inspired me to make Doodle Rush, which is the game Happy Salmon from North Star Games, which comes in this little fish package. Now, I mean, I think you'll all agree that's a very pretty thing to have in the middle of a nice lacy wedding table, a green fish. But if you don't like green, I've also got blue. And when you combine the two games together, you've got a super quick, and we're talking 90 seconds, I would say, if that, 12-player game where everybody shouts and runs around the table and fist bumps and high fives. It's absolute chaos. It's silly. There's barely any rules, and it's great for kids. The way that it works, right, so inside each of these things there are sets of cards like this. Each player has one little set in their colour, and they say things like switcheroo and happy salmon, high five, and then there's pound it, which is basically a fist bump. And what you do is everybody stands around in a circle, and when they're ready, everyone turns over the top card on their deck. Mine says pound it. So I start looking around the table saying pound it, pound it, pound it. And I'm looking for somebody else who wants to pound it with me. And then we pound it, we both throw away our card, and we move on to the next one, which in this case also says pound it. So I might say high five, in which case I'm saying high five, high five, high five. Looking for somebody, I high five them, I throw away my card, and I move on. If it says switcheroo, then we swap places. If it says happy salmon, we do this weird slapping thing on each other's wrists, and then the first player to get rid of all their cards wins. It's crazy, it's chaotic, it's silly, it's funny. I don't see the dentists playing it, but maybe the actors or something, I don't know, or the game, I don't know. The kids, I think anyone could enjoy it. And to be honest, I think even the German people, with their lack of English, can probably work out what pound it means, what high five means. Aside from those, we've got the little pictures there. So this, surefire, there's going to be 12-player games of Happy Salmon going on. Okay, so what about those dentists? Okay, they don't want to run around, they don't want to shout and be silly, they're not quite as sort of extroverted as that. But I think they'd be quite happy doing a quiz, right? So I think a trivia type exercise would be good, and I think one that is really, really nice, a nice game, is the game Timeline from Asmodee, which comes in these little tins, and there's a whole load of them. I've got lots of them. So this one is the British history version. This one is inventions. There's one on science and discoveries. There's one for music and film. So whatever they're sort of interested in, then there's a timeline for them to play. It's a pretty little box. Simple rules. Doesn't take up an enormous amount of space. I suppose it does a bit of table space there, isn't it, as you lay out that line of cards. But if they like it, it only takes 10 minutes to play. You can go and pick up a different version. You know, once you're done with historical events, you can go and have a look at, you know, music and film or something like that. Let's have a look at how it works. In Timeline, each player has 4 cards showing an event from history, but with no date on it. And players attempt to win the game by being the first to get rid of their cards. On a player's turn, they place one of their cards in relation to all the other cards on the table. And all those cards are in date order, creating a historical timeline. Once placed, then the player flips their card over to show the year that that event occurred. If it's in the correct place, then that card remains on the table in the timeline, and the player is one step closer to winning because they've now lost that card. If it's in the incorrect position though, the player discards the card and draws a new one to replace it. And so the game continues and gets harder and harder as that timeline gets longer. If you thought Happy Salmon was silly, then I don't know what you're going to make of Yogi. Yogi is about the easiest game in terms of, you know, the rules. There are barely any rules. In fact, the cards pretty much tell you exactly what to do. So it comes in this nice little tin, and inside the tin you've got a couple of card holders in here, and then the cards which actually tell you what to do. So if I turn over the top card on my turn, which is what I have to do, the card says this card must be on my left forearm. So I've got to balance it on here. And then the next player would take their turn, the next player would take their turn. And as long as this stays on my left forearm, I'm still in the game. So on my next turn, I get to take another card. And my next card, I should have taken these out of the tin because they're hard to pick up in the tin, says that my right index finger must be touching nothing. Okay, so which is my index finger? Well, ET is helping me out there. So my right index finger must be touching nothing. And then we go around the table and everybody else takes their turn. If anybody fails to fulfill all their rules, then they're out of the game. So now I must take another card, but I must not touch it with my right index finger. And this card says that my right hand must be above my right elbow. So now, for the rest of the game, I'm going to be like this, and we go round the table, and again, now maybe a couple of people have dropped out because they've failed. Now, how am I going to pick up a card with my right hand above my right elbow? Do you know what? I'm going to do it with my left... Oh, okay, I'm going to do it with my left hand. And I've dropped my card. But we're going to end up with these cards, you know, stacked around your person, balanced on your head and under your armpit and you know, behind your glasses and so on. That's basically how the game works. And then gradually people drop out and you get into these ridiculous poses. And then you play it again. The cards are made of this lovely durable plastic, so they're not going to get damaged very easily. In fact, it's a brilliant product, the way it's been put together with the little card holders and things. I had Bez's original version in a bind. Bez is actually a friend of mine, and she created this wonderful game in a bind. Then it was released with this wonderful artwork from Gigamic, and it just gets better and better. So yeah, Yogi. I think that's a fantastic icebreaker, really easy to play, small, sit on the table nicely there. It's lovely that it's been made by a friend of mine, so, you know, I can feel proud of that as well as if I had anything to do with it. Well, to be fair, I did play a prototype and told Bez what I thought of it back in those days. In cockroach poker, each player has a hand of cards showing rats, bats, flies, scorpions, stink bugs, spiders, toads and cockroaches. And the aim is to make one player lose the game by forcing them to collect 4 of any single type of critter. On your turn, you pass a card face down to any other player around the table, and you declare what critter is on the card. The player can call out true or false, or they can choose to look at the card and then pass it on themselves. If the receiver says true or false, then the card is checked. And if it was true or false as stated by the receiver, then the passer gets the card back and keeps it on the table in front of them, making them one step closer to losing the game. Then that passer will have to play again. If the receiver was wrong though, for example, they said that the original statement was true, but it wasn't, then the receiver collects the card instead and they play again. If the card is passed on, then the new passer can make any claim that they wish, the same claim or change it, about which type of critter is on that card. And the new receiver has to make a judgment on the validity of the claim. And when a player collects 4 of one type of critter, then they lose and everybody else wins. So cockroach poker is actually one of my favourite games of all time, and the reason for that is because this is what I would call a pure game. It's one mechanism, and that mechanism is fun. That mechanism is just lying to your friends or telling the truth and then them accusing you of lying. That's it. There's nothing else. It's stripped back to that one mechanism, and it's a fun mechanism. I say it's a spider, you tell me I'm lying. We turn it over, it is a spider. We all laugh. It's brilliant. I love it. That it's so simple. I've got the Cockroach Poker Deluxe version. I'm not going to use that anymore. I'm going back to basic Cockroach Poker because it doesn't need any bells and whistles at all. It comes in a lovely little package, fantastic, cute, sort of ugly art, but very, very distinctive. I think Cockroach Poker is a winner all round. I would play this anytime. I absolutely love it. In Rock, Paper, Wizard, players are attempting to have their playing piece closest to the treasure at one end of the board, and if successful, they score points. They manipulate their position on the board by casting spells at the other players, and in any given round there are 4 spells revealed on the table. The players call out Rock, Paper, Wizard, and simultaneously make one of the hand gestures shown on one of the spell cards, pointing their gesture at a specific player around the table. The spells are then resolved from the start player and continuing clockwise. They're going to move players' pieces forwards or backwards on the board, or swap their positions, or steal gold from other players, and a spell might even alter the target of another spell. If 2 players cast the same spell on each other, then a wild surge occurs and they instead draw a random spell and cast that one on their target instead. The closest and second closest players to the treasure after all the spells are cast earn some gold. And once a player has 25 gold pieces, the game ends and that player wins. WizKids recently produced my game Throne. This came out a few months ago. It's a dice trick-taking game. A trick-taking game that uses dice instead of cards. And I'd never really, I was very aware of WizKids as a large American brand, and I was certainly aware of Zev Schlesinger, who heads up the sort of board game section of WizKids from his time at Z-Man or Z-Man Games. But I hadn't really played many WizKids games. I'd always thought they were, you know, there's quite a lot of fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons style stuff going on, which usually isn't really my thing at all. But having produced Throne, I thought I'd check out a couple of the more sort of popular of the WizKids games. And that's when I came across Rock, Paper, Wizard. And so I bought it, I played it, and I really, really like it. I've had so much fun playing this. Every time we end up laughing, every time we attract a big crowd who gather round and watch what are you doing? What are you playing? Because we're all doing these silly hand signals and pointing them at each other in all sorts of ridiculous ways. There's no real strategy. It's like Cash and Guns, the party game Cash and Guns, but it's quicker, it's neater, it comes in a smaller package. I think it's easier to explain. I think the cards with the hand art on them are done really, really nicely. Some of the other components actually muddy the waters a little bit. The fact that you can't quite tell it's hard to tell which player is which character because the colours aren't, particularly distinct and things like that. But the production overall is really, really nice. This is, for such a simple game, I still think this is too complex for most of the people that would come to my wedding. But it's not too complex for the gamers, and I think it's a really nice party-style game for them. And the gamers that I've played it with have enjoyed it. So I think it's going to go on possibly on their table rather than anybody else's. But I think it's always a hit. It's always a good laugh, and so I'll be glad to have that one there. I think this should get more buzz than it does. I'm sure it's very popular. I'm sure it probably does sell a lot of copies, but I don't hear many people talking about it in the circles that I sort of mix in. Speed Cups is another one of those games where there are really no rules to learn. You can just pick it up and immediately start playing. So what we do is we turn over a card, and then all of us try and make this sort of pattern with our coloured cups here before the other players, and when we do that we hit the bell. So here I've got to make this pattern, so let me just pop it there and then we'll have a go. So I'm doing this and I'm racing against the other players, and then I hit the bell, then we turn over and I score the card. We'll turn over the next one and it's like this. So I'm racing to make this pattern and it's like that, and I hit the bell and I win the card. And so we continue here. Okay, so I need that, and I hit the bell, and so on. That's it. That's the entire game. So what do you reckon? Am I just going to annoy people by putting speed cups out there? Are people going to get irritated by the constant bing, bing, bing noise as people hit that bell? Or is that going to be the thing that's going to draw people to the table and make them go, oh, what are you playing? And then you can pick it up, you can see, you can learn the rules just by watching this one. It becomes immediately obvious what you have to do. So it's kind of got that viral thing where one people watches a couple of other people playing it and then they know how to play it, so they can just take it off and play it with another group. And anyway, that bell, noisy as it might be, it's going to be drowned out by the people who are playing Happy Salmon. There are lots of different variant ways of playing Dobble, but this is the way that I normally play. So you've got your deck of cards here, and each player has one of them in front of them, and then there is a deck in the middle, and everybody is looking at their card, and they're trying to find the one thing, and there will only be one, that matches from their card with the card in the middle of the table. And I'm looking at this now, and I cannot see the match. There must be one there. And in every game that I ever play, I have people saying, well, there isn't one. There's nothing that matches here. But there must be. There must be. There always is. What is it? What is it that matches between this one and this one? Is here, isn't it? It's the little robot, okay? So in that case, I need to call out what matches from my card with this one before this player calls out what matches from this one to this one, which in this case would be the tank. The tank. So they would call out and they would put that on their thing, and now they've got a new one to play with, and so on. So this player looks at it, it's the rose, so they put that on there, and now I'm looking here and I'm saying it's the robot again, so the robot goes on the top of my pile, and so on. And then at the end of the game, once we've got through the whole deck, you count up and you see how many cards you've managed to get into your pile. The ingenious thing is the fact that there's always a match between two cards, but only ever one thing matches. It's a mathematical marvel, is Dobble. And it comes in so many different versions. Now, I have two versions. I have Dobble Hollywood and I have Dobble Harry Potter, and they both suffer from the same thing, which is that sometimes it's not that easy to work out what the icons are meant to be. So this one's pretty straightforward, isn't it? We've got Statue of Liberty, we've got a camera, we've got a tank. I mean, is this R2-D2 or something, or a little robot? I mean, people aren't immediately going to know what that is when they first glance at it necessarily. But I mean, and again, this icon is at a glance is a bit tricky. This sort of light here, I suppose fangs or teeth. You know, it's not that hard, is it really? Maybe I'm over speaking it. I suppose this is a mummy, but at a glance, when it's small like that, that could be a robot. I think they could make these icons a bit clearer. Once we get onto Harry Potter Dobble, then it gets even more complicated, because I'm not that familiar with Harry Potter. I've watched all the films, so I know that this is Severus Snape and this is Ron Weasley. What's this house called? That's the baddie house, isn't it? Is it Slytherin? No idea what this owl is called, and it wouldn't matter if I could just call out owl, but there's another owl in these pictures that isn't the same owl as this one, and I don't know what this is. Is it some sort of mirror or something? I don't know. This is a werewolf, apparently. It doesn't look like any werewolf I've ever seen. So you've got to know Harry Potter a little bit to get the most out of this set. But the great thing about Dobble is it's such an easy game for anyone to play. You know, maybe I should have just got basic Dobble and put that on the table instead of these fancy versions, but I like having the version, you know, something a little bit different. In Sushi Go, each player has a hand of cards showing different types of sushi. They select one card to keep in front of them on the table and pass the rest to their left neighbour. This is repeated until all the cards are on the table in front of players. Players then score points for the cards they've collected. So nigiri score 1, 2 or 3 points, but the points are trebled if they're combined with wasabi. Tempura scores nothing for a single card, but it scores 5 points if you have a pair. Sashimi only scores if you have a set of 3 of them, which is worth a massive 10 points. But dumplings score 1, 3, 6, 10 or 15 points, depending on the size of your set. Sushi rolls and puddings score based on who had more of them than any other player. And after 3 rounds of this, the player with the most points wins. So at this point, Sushi Go is a card game classic, okay? It's a staple. There'll be lots of people at my wedding who will have already played it, who will know how to play it, who'll be able to demonstrate to the other people how to play it too. It's always popular, always goes down well. I find it's a really good game for children, but it's also a really good game for adults who don't play many games, because it's simple enough to learn the rules, but it feels like it's got some nice little strategic or tactical choices going on. I had two versions of Sushi Go. I had the original version, which I've had for a long time, the first edition from Phil Walker Harding, and I really like the simplicity of the art in this, and I like the size of the package is really small as well. But I also picked up the Zock Verlag version with this sort of controversial, ugly German art. You know, it's I find it cute. I like it, but not everybody does. The great thing is I've got a German version, so I can put that, where the German contingent at the wedding can play it. But I've also recently bought the other version. And the reason that I've bought this, the mainstream sort of English language version, is because I don't want to get that original first edition one ruined by taking it to a wedding. So this game right version should be a little bit more hardy. I haven't even taken it out of its packet yet. I don't like this version as much. I don't like the art style as much as I do the original version. But it's fine, and I think it's a good one to have lying around at the wedding.
Just One is a cooperative party game where all players work together to get the best score. The group are given a mystery word which everyone sees except for one player, who will be the guesser. All players each write one word down on their plastic easel except for the guesser, and the guesser closes their eyes, then all clues are revealed. Any words which have been duplicated are cancelled by tipping the easel over, and the guesser then opens their eyes and looks at the remaining clues. They then try to guess the mystery word. This is repeated 13 times with players taking turns as guesser, and the group scores 1 point for each success. A score of 7 to 8 is considered average, 11 to 13 is considered pretty awesome according to the manual.
This week, just one. This last week, just won the Spiel des Jahres award, the most prestigious award in the board game world, and it does it deserve it? I'm not quite sure. It's quite that big sort of masterpiece, but what it is extremely accessible, and it's unusual because it's a cooperative party game. You've got a table of people working together, and it goes over really well. It's so simple. There's no real rules. I've played this with large groups, people swapping in, coming in, stepping out. It's good for that. That's ideal for a wedding, that, somebody can walk away from the game and they won't ruin the game. Somebody else can join in midway through and it won't ruin the game at all. You can play for as long as you like, as little as you like. I've played this with a group of people, half of them playing in German, the other half of people playing in English in the same game, and we've managed to make it work. It's going to be a game that the German people can easily pick up without me needing to have a separate sort of German edition of it. So the only concern I have about this one is that the box is a bit bigger than the other games that I've been looking at. It's hardly a big box, but it's going to take up a little bit of space on the table. So whether it needs to be one of the games that's set off to one side, although I think the gameplay is ideal for being one of those table games. Of course, if Iris had her way, there would just be a copy of Quacks of Quedlinburg and probably Bunny Kingdom on every single table. I've had to put my foot down about that. I think probably they're a little bit too complex. So the next game we're going to look at is the game Ghost Blitz. In Ghost Blitz, one player turns over a card and then all the players race to grab the item that they're supposed to grab based on what's on the card. So in this instance, we can see there's a green bottle here, there's a green bottle here. So in that instance, you would grab the green bottle and whoever grabbed it first would score the card and take it as a point. The next card this is roughly the same. There's a blue book here, so you would grab the blue book and you would put it in front of you. And these are lovely wooden chunky pieces. They're really nice components here. But the game gets more complicated because in this case, there is no red ghost and there is no blue bottle. So in this case, you have to grab the thing that is not a ghost, that is not a bottle, that is not blue and is not red. So the answer here is you grab the grey mouse. Okay. The next one then would be this one. So there is no green sofa and there is no blue mouse. So you've got to grab the thing that is not blue, is not a mouse, is not a chair and is not green. So in this case, it's the ghost. You've got to grab the white ghost. And so the game continues as you go through them. Mind-bending stuff. You don't want to grab grey, you don't want to grab white, you don't want to grab blue or chair. So you're going to grab the green bottle. in this instance. And then you can make the rules more complex by saying that if there's a book showing on the card, then instead of grabbing it, you have to shout it out. And so if you grab it, that's actually the wrong answer. So the game gets more and more complicated. I've been a big fan of Ghost Blitz for a long time now, and actually I like Ghost Blitz 2 as well. I haven't gone as far as getting Ghost Blitz 3 and 4 or whatever they're called. I think they have alternate titles, but there are lots of different versions of Ghost Blitz. And they're all by this guy Jacques Zymet, and he makes lots of very similar games. I've got another game by him called Shicky Mickey. But there are always these little boxes, often speed games. He made the game Cockroach Poker, actually, that we've already looked at. So he's twice on this list, so well done, Jacques. Featuring twice at my wedding. Yeah, Ghost Blitz, people love it or they hate it. They find it really difficult, and some people enjoy that frustration. Other people find the challenge really satisfying. So that's definitely going to feature. The lovely tactile components as well. It all just looks so great. But what else is going to be there? Not on the table, but maybe off to one side. Well, certainly I'm going to have all of my games there. So there'll be a copy of Pikoko, there'll be a copy of Throne. I think they're too complex really for that sort of environment, so I don't particularly, I'm not going to push anyone to play those, but it would be nice if people played Big Bazaar, which is my game with blue-orange that I designed. This is another speed game, similar sort of vein to things like Ghost Blitz and Dobble, where you're trying to spot a pattern and then call something out before the other players. Really funny. It looks like a game for kids, but it's actually a game that adults can really enjoy. It was always intended as a sort of adult and family sort of party game. In the same sort of vein as things like Jungle Speed and that sort of thing. So, Big Bazaar, I hope people play that. Party game Say Anything from North Star Games. This one's a sort of, it's too big to sit on a table, but it's you could get out and play it. It doesn't take up much space, but the actual box is pretty massive. This is a sort of corruptible party game, I'd say. You could play it entirely clean, and just have a really nice time with your friends, getting to know your friends as an icebreaker, or you can be a little bit creative with your answers and make them a little bit naughty. And I know that appeals to some players. There's not going to be any copies of Cards Against Humanity lying around because I hate it. So this is about as naughty as it gets if you're playing with my particular friends. But creative naughtiness I enjoy. So Say Anything is great for that. I'll have a copy of Ticket to Ride London there. Now, Ticket to Ride London, I hesitate to say it's a simplified version of Ticket to Ride because it's not. It's actually more complex than Ticket to Ride. It's got an additional little rule in there that isn't in your basic Ticket to Ride game, but it is much shorter and much smaller. So this is the closest we're going to get to a proper board game with like proper board game pieces and tactile, movement of those trains and forming those connections. It's pretty. It'll be nice for the German visitors to see a game that's all based around London. Of course, they've never been to the UK before, so that'll be great. So Ticket to Ride London will be around. And then Bananagrams, which I think some people may be familiar with from the group. This is a bit of a mainstream sort of hit, isn't it? A word game, similar to Scrabble, much simpler, easier to sort of carry around, easier to take to that sort of setting. And fits in quite nicely with Happy Salmon as something in a little pencil case. So I think it'll be quite neat sitting around there as well. So there you go. Let me know what you think. Am I on the right tracks? What do you reckon? Do you think those games are going to be fun at a wedding? Do you think those games are going to interfere with, normal wedding sort of activities? Does it feel inappropriate to have games there at all? I'm interested in all sides of this. To be honest, I'm not taking them away. It's going to happen. But I'm quite happy for you to tell me that I'm wrong to do so. And great, if you can offer me up game suggestions, things I haven't played, things that I might enjoy, then I'd be really excited to take a look. For anybody else who's just sort of thinks, maybe, these games are all fantastic games. If these might fit for you as good family games, as little sort of travelling games, games to take away on holiday, games to play on a train, these are nice little portable, simple things, and I can recommend everything that I've mentioned in this video. If you enjoyed the video, please watch some of my others on Twitter. I'm at BoardGameWales. On Board Game Geek, I'm Adam78, and please subscribe to my channel, Adam's Board Game Wales. Thank you very much for watching, and all the best.